So there we have it then. Piastri has officially signed for McLaren for the 2023 season, according to multiple major sources who have come out and said the deal is done. Ricciardo is to be paid off and allowed to join any team essentially he wants. There are multiple seats up for grabs. Of course, the obvious one is to take up the mantle of first driver at Alpine, returning to the Enstone outfit where he left to join McLaren. And a really interesting turn of events, and we're going to discuss what that means for McLaren, especially because we've already kind of covered the fact that I think the move to Alpine for Ricciardo will be great for Ricciardo, but not necessarily the best move for Alpine. I don't think they'll be getting the driver that Ricciardo used to be. So we're going to talk about McLaren a bit more, what this means for their prospects, their future, what it says about them as a team, and whether or not this is a good move for them and Piastri. Now, we'll cover off Piastri first. Of course, this is his first drive in Formula One, and you have to think from his point of view. Yes, McLaren's the bigger name in the sport, and you'd expect the better prospects long-term, given the infrastructure that McLaren have, than potentially Alpine. So for Piastri, I think that's a fantastic move. I don't think you can argue that. I think he's definitely... If he's got the opportunity there between McLaren and Alpine, me personally, given that choice, I'm choosing McLaren. I think you'd expect them to have the better opportunities moving forward. But for me, the focus is on McLaren. The focus is on, is this what they should have done? Especially when you're seeing someone the caliber of Fernando Alonso joining a rival in Aston Martin, who long-term you expect is going to be a direct comparison to McLaren in that fight to get to the front, fighting the Mercedes, fighting the Red Bulls, fighting the Ferraris. Is this the right move to bring in a youngster in his first season when you've already got a young driver in Lando Norris in the other seat? Now, my short answer to this is going to be no. I don't think this is the right move for McLaren. Now, I don't deny the fact I think Piastri is a hot property. He's very, very well regarded in the sport. But he hasn't gone through the rite of passage to join a big, big name. And this is where I think McLaren fall down. I think this cements McLaren's position as a mid-table to lower team in the modern F1. Because, you know, they haven't been challenging for a title in a long, long time. They've not been at the front. And they should be that challenger. They should be the team, given all of the technology. You know, they are known for being at the pinnacle of technology, not just in Formula One, but in just cars and engineering in general. You expect them to come into each season with, you know, something just exciting, an interesting concept to help them get to the front of the grid. We haven't seen that in a few years. You know, we saw that with the black McLaren, where they went for that really slim-bodied approach. They tried something different. It didn't pay off. And that was back when Alonso was still driving for McLaren. It didn't pay off, but they tried something, and that was really, really key for McLaren then. But if you look now into the F1 22 season, in my opinion, they've come in with the most vanilla car possible. Now, of course, they have the papaya orange, and the car looks great, in my opinion, from a livery point of view. But in terms of the actual car, and you look at it versus the Ferraris, the Red Bulls, the Mercedes, with what they've done, how slim they've managed to pull it in, like the no side pod approach of the Mercedes. Obviously, you've got the scooped out car with the Ferrari. These really innovative ideas that the top teams have come to the table with. You compare that to what McLaren came into this season with, and it's just chalk and cheese. It's just so boring as a concept. You could just tell from the beginning it wasn't going to be a title winning contending car. It was going to be a carry on where we left off, safe choice option. And I just don't think this pays the way for McLaren. And if you're talking about big teams, when they're making their driver choices, big teams have an experienced hand with a young prospect. And, you know, like Red Bull's obviously an interesting one because it's their young prospect who's actually their quickest driver. But it's not just about having the older driver is the one who's going to lead the way, be the number one. It's about having that experience to help develop the car, develop the team, push the development, help point them in the right direction based on experiences they've had in other big teams where they can help drive how the car is developed over the next 2-3 years and help them, at least in McLaren's case, get back to the front. And they're not going to have that anymore. You know, they're going to have a youngster who's never driven for any other Formula One team, along with Lando Norris, who has also never driven for any other Formula One team. He doesn't have that experience, I think, in Lando to lead the McLaren team back to where they need to be. I do think he's a future world champion. I think he is on the level of talent of a Verstappen, of a Leclerc. I think he is up there with those guys, and give him the right car, he will challenge. My issue is, can they get to that right car with the driver lineup they've just gone for with Piastri and Norris? Do they have that experience to do it? And the answer for me is no. I think Piastri needed to go through. If McLaren consider themselves one of the big players in the sport, which is exactly what they should do, Piastri should be going to, fair enough if Alpine wanted him, Alpine would have been a good shout, and later on in his career, if he proves to be good enough, he could have gone to a Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, right? But realistically, he should have been going to a Haas, a Williams, a team that can afford to have two young drivers or to bed someone into the sport. And they're like Williams have been doing, like they did with Albon, like they've done for Russell when he's proven himself, missed a Saturday, gone on to Mercedes. He needed to come in and have that young drive. And don't get me wrong, it's fantastic for him to go and get that drive from McLaren. But from McLaren's point of view, I just think it cements their place as a midfield team. They don't have a big team mentality anymore. They don't have the we're challenging for titles mentality anymore. We've seen it they always had the Alonso, Button, Hamilton. They had these big names to help drive them forward. And yeah, they didn't get it right. Yes, the cars didn't get to the level that we'd expect of a McLaren, but at least those decisions, in my opinion, were the right ones. I think with Piastri and Norris, it's too youthful. It's too, he may prove to be one of the quickest drivers, but if they can't develop the team and create a car that's able to fight at the front, what's the point in having a quick, young, raw driver? Because it's not going to benefit them long term. It's not going to help them get where they need to be. They need to have that foundation of a car that can really challenge. And then if the drivers aren't doing it, look at bringing someone in who can really get the most out of the car that's underneath them. I just don't think they're there yet. And I think having two young drivers in that position is not going to work for McLaren. I hope that it does. A real soft spot for McLaren. I really want them to do this. But I have to say, I think the way they've handled this with Daniel Ricciardo has been really poor. I think that they've done him a disservice by allowing all of this stuff to come out in the media, for him to probably find out about his future via Twitter. And via these headlines, as opposed to finding out himself, because the stories about them communicating to him that he would be removed from the team for the next year came after Piastri's statement, came after clearly Piastri had already had conversations with McLaren management. So for him to find out the way that he has, it's been a bit of a mess. I think he deserved more than that. Obviously, we're still at half the season to go. I know this is the time of year that the contracts are made, but they should have made sure that Ricciardo was fully informed, that he knew ahead of time. He's been adamant he's staying there for the next year. And it will be best for all parties at this stage that he moves on and Ricciardo goes off to Alpine or wherever he ends up. And it's good for him that other teams are interested. I wasn't sure there would be a huge amount of interest in Ricciardo, but I think the name clearly is still pulling weight in the sport. It's good for his confidence that so many teams still want him. At least that's what's being reported. So good for him. But for McLaren, I just think that it's difficult to see how a Piastri-Norris partnership drives McLaren up the grid, regardless of how talented they are and how quick they are. I don't have faith in it, along with an unproven McLaren management team. They haven't been winning titles since the days of Ron Dennis. So whatever you think of how well they've restructured that team and how close they're getting to the front, we've been talking about McLaren gaining tenths of a second and slowly creeping their way back to the front of the grid for what feels like a decade. They're not doing it. And I do not see how hiring a youngster who's never driven in anger a Formula One car before is going to help them get where they need to be, especially when the lead driver now is going to be Lando Norris, who has no experience in a title-winning team. And he has nothing he can bring to the table other than what he's learned at McLaren, which is all post-Ron Dennis title-winning era. I don't see how it's going to work. I don't see what the benefit of the move is. I completely see it from Piastri's point of view, and I think it's a fantastic move for him to get into the sport. What a name to drive for as your first drive. I mean, there aren't many people who get to come into the sport at such a big team with their first drive in F1. So fair play to Piastri, great move for him, and I wish him all the success in the world. But for McLaren, they need to have a real think about what they're going to do to get back to title winning ways, because I was super excited for them when they restructured the management with Zach Brown. He looked like he was making all the right moves, saying all the right things, but it has not happened, and it's been years now, and they're still... I know that they were fighting at the back of the grid, and obviously they've got back to the midfield, but there is no evidence that they're even close to getting back to the front. They had a decent race in Hungary. They have decent races here and there. They had the race win in Monza last season, but it's all just the odd race they're doing well. And I don't think it paints a picture that they're going to get back to the front anytime soon. I think they are, maybe not vocally, but with the decisions they're making, they are not cementing their place as a front-running team. They are confirming their position as a midfield team. And it's sad. I think it's sad for such a big name in the sport to be struggling as much as they are. But the key thing for me then, let me know in the comments below. Do you agree? Do you think McLaren have made a bad move, but it's a fantastic move for Piastri? Maybe you think it's a great move for McLaren. Maybe you think that he is the next massive thing and that he can help bring them back to glory. Maybe you just think it's a stepping stone for Piastri. He can come in, show what he can do, outperform the car like Norris has done for a few seasons, become a hot prospect, and then he can go to a big team that can really challenge in a few years. Maybe it's that for Piastri. As I say, I think it's a great move, and it's certainly that could be an option for him. Whatever happens, I don't think there's a way to look at this where Piastri and McLaren's bad for Piastri. They're not that bad of a team. But for McLaren's prospects, do you think that this will benefit them? Do you see them getting back to the front of the grid, or do you just see them struggling every year to attain a position where they can challenge the Mercedes, the Ferraris, the Red Bulls of the world now after so many years of disappointment? Do you think they are now just a midfield team for the foreseeable future? As I say, let me know in the comments below. If you are new around here, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit a like on that video if you did enjoy the content. Otherwise, just going to thank you so much for watching the video today. As I make sure you're in the comments below. Love to hear what you guys think. And I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.